Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be
Welcome,
here.
Adrian.
Hello,
We're
hello,
so
hello.
glad you're here.
Of course, I wouldn't miss it for the world. So here, let me
Thank-
jump on in, and I believe y'all can see my screen. So I'm going to go ahead to the next slide. And I just wanted to say that I love community, especially online communities. And I have been fortunate enough to work solely in this space for almost a decade. And, just as Beth had mentioned, and before running a community at a large multinational, among other projects. So today I want to put forward that online communities can no longer be an isolated island. The world has changed, and it's about creating something more. Our research that I've done at Higher Logic and Vanilla from the last 3 years on customer experience and self-support of the general public, not just people that love community, but people in general, has shown us that this is an expectation from your members. The most elite communities are making this happen, and also independent research has shown that these are things that people expect. When we talk support, it needs to be more than self-help or a space for this is broken, but more about spaces for success. And it's been more now than ever about creating spaces of belonging. It's more about moving customers forward and creating a sense of community. However, it's also about the balance of creating something for organizational impact. So today, I'm not only talking to community builders who get this, because obviously I know a lot of you do, but I also wanted to take this opportunity, on this platform to share these ideas with people that can collectively bring us along, because there's a lot of stakeholders here as well, the community curious and others. And I'm hoping that this is a vision that we can bring all to fruition. So let's get ahead. First, I just want to touch back on something I talked about last year. If some of you that were there, and I hopefully remember, I talked about community triage. So the idea of community triage, which I proposed last year, is the idea of the community acting as a place where the community journey begins for anything for proper treatment. And I've gotten lots of great feedback on this from you and others as the year has gone on. But I started to notice an even bigger trend and opportunity, which led me to looking and seeing how we as community builders can go even further. So it's more than just the first touch point, but melting community into the fabric of everything, into the idea of center of excellence. So why a center of excellence? Well, to me, it denotes the best way forward to succeed and focus on the things that matter, namely the best experience and best possible outcomes for our audiences and our communities. When I talk to people, they talk to me about their blog, training, videos, their knowledge base, their articles, and yes, their communities, including forums, events, and more. And the challenge question is always, how do we bring this all together and create a cohesive experience for our customers and people we are attracting? Now, more than ever, I'm convinced we as community professionals need to align ourselves with the community experience / customer success teams. And I know many of you may report into marketing or may even be in a marketing role, or maybe you have your own community department, which if you do, I'm very, jealous. And I think that's a fascinating, fantastic thing. But I'm not suggesting you shift departments. I'm not, arguing for a reorg. I'm not even suggesting that you own the center of excellence. Today, I want to talk about a mindset of the work we do and how we explain it to influence the company culture and how we see the future. So in the end, community work is about helping our community be more successful. And I'm going to talk today about how we can make this happen. So I sat down and I had this, the best thing to do is just map it out. So I see this as an opportunity for there to be a space, a digital home, so to speak, for all the things for customers to be successful. And some call it a center of excellence, but really it's a community of excellence. But the community is just permeating all aspects of this. So the conversation is not to the community as much as with the community. And it would touch all the key aspects from help, learning, connection, discovery, and thought leadership. And so why do we want to build something like this? Well, there's a couple of benefits. So standardization, so that we're all working together in an organized and clear way. We're reducing our operating costs because we're being more efficient in the resources that we have. We're creating a better experience, so it's no longer disjointed and we're sending people to different places. And finally, that the community is having a stake in it. So it's by the people and for the people. But how do we get there? I mean, this is all nice and I can talk about that. But I want to talk now about the 5 ways to transform your thinking and get you onto the path of making this happen. So the first is kind of obvious in some ways and not obvious for others for that may not be aware, which is leaning into existing trends. And to me, community is the king for support and satisfaction, and it needs to be the crown jewel. So this is actually, I love this uh, number. I always like to share it because it really resonates with me. And I don't know about you, but hey, I'm sure the audience would probably agree that almost 50% of people would rather spend 30 minutes cleaning a toilet than wait on hold for customer service. And this is actually a Help Shift survey. And I'm certainly one of these people. I was on hold the other day. I was just like, oh man, I'd rather clean a toilet, honestly. And I think people also hate ticketing systems by themselves. A ticket system introduces a layer between the customer and the company, and it kind of impedes direct communication. And its responses are usually automated. And after the wait, it's usually a response from a guide or some automated response, and not very helpful. And you don't really have an opportunity to hear from others that maybe are using a product and how they fix something. The other thing that we know is that over 90% of people start their search on Google. This is not only true for our own research, the TSIA has said this, and I believe Richard Millington did a talk a couple of weeks ago, maybe, where he spoke about the number one indicator of success for a community is Google searches, or what is known in the SEO business as organic. And we're not talking about organic fruits and vegetables. We're talking that people naturally come and find your community from doing searches, like how can I, and then your online community shows up. And it's also true with the trends that we're seeing, is that even more over the last couple of years when we've done this research on self-support. And I want to be clear, it's not just higher logic vanilla customers. We went out and asked the general public on this kind of question. And the majority of people just prefer solving the problems themselves online. And as a matter of fact, it's been validated on study by study that north of 80% of people want to solve things themselves. And not only that, they expect that to be an option. So you have to think about that not only do people want to solve it themselves, but they're expecting that your company is offering that. And this is not only the space is what they want, 90%, almost 90% said they appreciated it. So that, they're looking at brands that offer this in a very positive way. And this also has an impact for anyone using community, which we've seen that has an impact on their NPS and CSAT scores. So this is, we know this is where you should be looking at terms of your customer experience with your brand and how support is handled. It can have a great impact. But here's what's funny. Some companies keep hiding their community. And I'm not talking about you specifically, anonymous person out there or to the audience, but there are plenty of people I know. I can get an amen for some that sometimes you're trying to find the community and you're like, I can't find it. I don't know why it's a secret, but I'm going to help with that, hopefully, with this next slide. So why should we put our community at the core? It has immense value. Now, if you don't, have a community, you're probably skeptical, or maybe it's because you don't have the data to know. But I need you to trust me to put the community up front. Why? The benefits of the community to your company, if measured and done right, are immense. And I know this from talking to hundreds of communities, but understandably, most of these people want to stay anonymous because they don't want their competitors to know how great the community is for them. That's why whenever I do these case studies, PR and legal teams tend to remove this stuff because they don't want people to know. However, without their names, I can share it. So, take a screenshot, and here are a whole bunch of really, really great stats, that you're aware of. $20 million a year in support savings, 30 points increase in NPS, larger deal sizes, larger renewals, 70% of tickets handled by the community. There's tons of opportunity. These are great opportunities for you to go out there and showcase, hey, this is why community is so important. So what's next that we can do? The next thing that we can consider is a success-first mentality. What does that mean? What I started doing at Vanilla when we had our support community, we changed it to be a success community. We wanted to get our brain away from thinking about it being transactional and work on integrating all kinds of success factors for our company. And you can do the same thing. So, maybe the community content in the e-commerce store and KB articles in the community, it's just going to be completely seamless. And it's just a change in mindset of the language of what we do. So it's really tending to talk about support, but we want to change the language of the company to see it more about getting our customers successful in what they're doing. And so we want to focus on outcomes that make our customers happy and successful. So Some of you may know what customer effort score is, and you may have seen this too, where you go on a community and after you're done and say, hey, was it easy to find your solution, or how hard did you find it? Some companies will look at how long did it take to get a resolution to the question that you asked. Some will do a sense of community or sense of belonging or sense of value survey as well. These are all kinds of touch points that allow people to get a sense of, hey, what kind of value is the community? And then finally, what we want to look at is breaking down the barriers to have the content for the right person at the right time when they need it and seamlessly, which is the most important, obviously. Which brings me to the third thing that we need to think about, and that is silos. I love this photo. I don't know if everyone knows what a silo is. I mean, maybe if you're out west, I think Beth is out in Calgary, knows all that wonderful stuff. You see them everywhere. So there's the big grain elevators and everything's in there. And basically, the idea of a silo, and you may have heard this word, is that essentially the teams get put into these little pods and there's not communication between. So I kind of was going to originally have a picture of Jeff Foxworthy, but then I realized that no one would probably get the joke because I'm so old. But, he used to have this whole, maybe a redneck with, well, so here's you may be in a silo if there's poor communication to key teams that will be impacted. You may be in a silo if you're duplicating projects in each department. You're misaligned in your priorities that have the largest organizational impact. People are always agreeing, but there's no incentive to think in new ways. And finally, you're getting great information from customers, but there's not really a way of it being shared effectively. So all those things are like, oh my God, silos. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been in plenty of companies where that's happened and also dealt with companies where that's happened. And communities, people are at a really important nexus to be these silo breakers. But I was like, well, how can we take this a step further and rather put all the work on the community people to do these silo breaking? So I have an idea that I'd like to float out here, which is essentially the centers of excellence, but through an advisory board. So the idea is you create a working group from your own employees to where the team consists of people leading functional areas of importance, and that's sales, marketing, product managers of each area that should be included. And the idea is to keep things balanced so things don't get out of whack. And you're saying, Adrian, how am I going to make this happen at my company? Well, it's crucial that you have executive sponsorship. And the thing is this, you want someone who is the face of your customers. And I would aim to have your chief customer officer or an executive who doesn't lead any of the direct departments I listed before, so that they kind of can act as a judge or impartial. And the community head doesn't need to lead necessarily. What I like to say is you don't need to lead, but you should be a leading voice. So I really want to have the community people highly involved in this. And you want to be surfacing the things from your community and their needs. The third thing is communication. And that's regular meetings to track what is working and communicating this, either using PM software, product management software. Monday.com is really great. It should be clear what people are working on. There should also be constant communication with the community on what it's working and what is not, what they want more of or less. And you may ask, how do you find that out? Well, of course, you talk to them. If anyone always asks me, hey, what's your best piece of community advice? It's talking to your community. It's not a secret. Talking to your community is the golden ticket for most things. And then the fourth thing that we want people to consider is impact, which is to make sure that the work is directed towards the goals of the organization and it has impact and can be measured. So in this case, if churn is an issue, or churn in the sense of customers that are canceling on you, or something that's been identified as something to be tackled, we know what unlocking and explaining the value tool may be paramount. That could mean, some departments work on videos, others on interviews or blog posts, or people use the product. Could be an Ask Me Anything session with experts. Your community is a wealth of information on their needs, and it's also where the Center of Excellence can't be successful without a strong community element. The community perspective is the linchpin to the success of this whole endeavor. So in the end, the Centers of Excellence is about servicing your community to be successful, and that also starts by knowing more about them. So which brings me to the fourth thing that you can do to transform, which is holistic personas. So what does this mean? So, I've done a lot of talks on personas, and I think that they're really important. But here's what's interesting. Your company already has a persona. Your marketing team probably has one. Your sales team probably has one. But someone who buys your product or reads your marketing content and visits your community is one person. And I would argue that you probably want to consider creating a master persona if possible. And the persona should be created to incorporate things beyond the community and probably involve other teams as well. So you want to take a total view of how people will interact with your company digitally, from support to community to the other resources you create. And you may ask, how do I start with all this? So you can look at the title of people and group them into buckets, then build them based on facts, which you can get by talking to them. You can talk to your CSM organization, and they can probably even help you identify the people you want to speak to and building out those buckets in those ways. So each of these boxes that you see here kind of has more generic, and then as it goes deeper, it's asking about the relationship to the product, the interaction with your centers of excellence, and how all the different ways that you want people to go through. And it also looks at their support style and the value and work methods as well that they work through. So the idea is really that you're going to have a really good idea of the people and build all the content out and focus the energy in a good way so that everyone's getting the things that they need from these centers of excellence. And then we come to the final thing, which is this takes time. It's really important. This is the biggest mistake that people don't realize, is that it takes time. And there's 3 P's to that, which is people, platforms, and planning. I know I'm going to get a hallelujah if I was in person. So the first thing is investing in people, specifically in community. It's more mature now. It's its own discipline. And this is why an event like this can actually exist. And that's why it's so important. So, if someone here is community curious or wanting to learn about community and has the power to make that decision, please invest in your teams with competent people, because everything else will not work unless that happens. The next thing to remember, and I'm saying this for all my platform brothers and sisters, is that platforms don't do the work. They can assist, but you also need the right tools. So don't try to make a blog software form platform. Use the right tools to solve what you're trying to achieve. And finally, this work takes time. So give yourself the time to plan. And so someone's saying, hey, what does this plan look like? So let's talk about planning COE. In the first phase, along with your vision and strategy, let's begin to put that Center of Excellence advisory team in place. We want to also make it very community-centric, so you may even consider adding members of the community to it or create a parallel advisory board. The idea is to make things as easy for your customers to get what they need in the best possible way. So you can craft a vision and a mission which is customer experience focused. This should not be something that takes long, but the next phase can. And that's actually where I see people kind of fall down. But I like to put between 90 and 120 days. And then in the perfect world, that's what it should take. And this is where your proper governance is set up, reporting relationships and ownership. It's where you want to identify staffing gaps. You want to bring in the persona data to make sure proper segmentation, content coverage in your centers of excellence. This is where all kinds of branding considerations and technology, and of course, assessing budget. Now, I base a lot of this on where I see companies will place the community in a very centric-like hub where you can access discussions and knowledge base and videos and training and other content. But you don't need to start going down the rabbit hole of complex system. It's more about how you want the experience to be and less about the technology. On an enterprise platform side, if you have a clear vision, most platform vendors can help execute. Where the trouble arises is where you haven't done the legwork and it's kind of like, help me build this thing. And we're like, what do you want to build? I don't know. Tell me. That's hard because we don't know your company and the culture. So it's good if you come. I'm saying this for any vendor. It's good if you have done some of the work ahead of time. And finally, it's the completion and launch. Then this gives you the time to seed content, work out a method, agile or other, to stay on task, weekly or monthly meetings with the advisory board, and then using an internal calendar and the community for internal collaboration. I mean, we use an internal community. I love it. I mean, I think it's probably the best way. I'm not saying that because I work at a vendor. I just think it's a great way because in a world with time zones and people in different schedules, the benefit of a forum is it's linear and people can add what they need and see what's going on, and people can get feedback, likes, reactions, and things of this nature. And finally, you always want to be continuously testing feedback and iteration. as we know, community never ends. Actually, it was the funniest story was I once was working on a community project, and the senior leader was like, "So when does this community project end?" And I was like, "It never ends. Even if I no longer work here, this community project will never end." So, that's the important thing to know. But you still want to launch, and that's the thing that people sometimes run into that problem is they try to get everything perfect. And you know what? Nobody's perfect. The thing is, you really just need to get it out there and iterate. And trust me, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of communities. No one launches perfect. Everyone just does the best, and the people that struggle in launching, that's where they run into problems. So when should you start? I would tell you to start now. And I'm not saying this is easy. Please believe me. I'm not saying this one simply just moves the wand and hopes this happens. I know each company, it will be different and there's challenges. Well, here's what I'm here to tell you today. It's happening now. And if it hasn't happened in your industry yet, it will come. The companies in your space that do this are doing it well. And those that don't do it will be absolutely crushed. What COVID has done is accelerated consumer expectations around digital experiences in ways only a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic can. And those companies that understand these new trends and expectations will benefit the most. So in summary, here's what I would suggest. Lean into the existing trends that I mentioned at the beginning. Have a success-first mentality. Create a Center of Excellence advisory board. Consider a holistic persona where you look at the totalness of the people that are engaging with you and your brand. And finally, let's remember those 3 P's, which is investing in the people, investing in the platform, and taking the time to plan properly. And so hopefully this inspired you to go forward. Here's my email if you want to reach out to me, and as well my Twitter, and I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn and other places. And I think I have a couple of minutes for questions, so I will toggle back my screen, and I'm open to the audience for any questions they may have or comments.
Hi, Adrian. Well, I feel like, the CMX community definitely often has questions, but I feel like you really were succinct, if that's the right word. There are no questions because I think the people are just stoked. We have a lot of people who are quoting you. Community never ends. Love that. So it's been really good. Oh, look, David Spinks has a question for us. Okay. Ooh. What's the biggest reasons communities fail post-launch?
I love that question. This could be a whole talk on its own. My personal opinion is they fail to bring the value or explain the value to. Well, I guess fail. I should take it back. Fail needs to be defined. Are we talking about failure of the community itself, or companies not believing in the value of the community? Because that's a totally different thing. Where I see companies where they pull the plug, it's because there was a lack of communication between the community team and the higher ups in the organization to realize the value and why they actually built it. If it's just the community itself the audience itself doesn't gravitate and it doesn't seem to take it on, it's because the concept was flawed. It starts at the beginning. The concept was flawed. They either tried to do too much or too little. To me, I love niches, but you have to do your research at a time. That's why there's that research phase where you go out and you talk to people and having a good sense, and even starting out a small Slack group or Facebook group just to prove your concept before you begin is so important. And a lot of people kind of skip that step. And I find a lot of times, I talk to a lot of people, I'm sure David does too. I see a lot of companies will say to me, this is what the community is going to do. And I'm like, well, that's nice. But you talk to the community, because you're making a lot of assumptions about how the community will be, but do they actually want this space? Like, are they going to care to come here? I remember I have one customer a long time ago, and they were doing like education software. And the teachers just want to talk to other teachers about teaching plans and the difficulty of being a teacher. And they couldn't get people to talk about their software. If they would have changed the concept of their community to be for teachers and teacher life, and it had been like sponsored by, it would have done amazing. But they were so focused. They were trying to. It's kind of, you need to go with the community. They're telling you what they want to do and what they want to talk about. if you keep forcing them, it's not, it's maybe the concept's not good. So you have to have those conversations. So hopefully that answered, David.
That's
I hope that.
awesome. I think it did. And it reminds me of this morning when we were talking to Chris Land from Salesforce, and she was equating community building to sailing, and that you have to go with the tides. And when the wind changes, you have to go with it. And I like that you're saying the same thing. You have to listen to the community and just go with it.
Yeah, I mean, or kayaking. It can be dangerous if you
Hacking.
try to go. You hit those rapids.
Thank you so much for joining us, Adrian. That was fantastic. Everybody, please flood the chat with your favorite emojis for Adrian Speyer from Higher Logic.